The city was still asleep when Emma Carter's alarm pierced the darkness. She didn't hit snooze. She never did. Her mornings were as precise as the ticking hands of the clock beside her bed, cold, metallic, relentless. Within minutes, she was already dressed in a slate gray suit, her hair tied in a neat bun, her expression calm but distant. Success, after all, left little room for hesitation. By 7, she was already at the glass tower where she built her empire, one deal at a time. The office lights reflected against the windows like stars caught inside cages. She liked that, the sense of control, of something that belonged entirely to her. "Morning, partner," Mason Brooks said as she stepped out of the elevator. He was leaning casually against the doorway of her office, coffee in hand. That confident half-smile he always wore plastered across his face. Mason was brilliant, charming, and infuriatingly good at reading people. Especially her. "I'm not your partner yet," Emma replied, setting down her laptop bag. "Not yet," he said. "But after this next project, who knows?" There it was again, the tension that always lingered between them. Somewhere between rivalry and something unspoken. Mason had joined the company 2 years after Emma, but his rise had been just as fast. Some called them the power duo. Others, silent enemies. The truth was probably both. When the intercom buzzed, Emma pressed the button automatically. "Ms. Carter, Miss Lane would like to see you and Mr. Brooks in her office." Margaret Lane, head of Livista Developments. A woman whose mere presence could make entire boardrooms fall silent. Emma admired her, feared her, and wanted to be her. Inside Margaret's office, sunlight poured through the massive windows, bathing the polished furniture in gold. "There you are," Margaret said with a warm but commanding smile. "Our 2 brightest stars. Sit down." Emma and Mason exchanged a quick glance before sitting. "I'll keep this short," Margaret continued. "There's a property coming up for acquisition in Hawaii. Oceanfront, prime land, family-owned for generations but facing a major tax lien. The perfect opportunity for expansion." Mason's eyebrows lifted slightly. "And you're sending us both?" "Yes," Margaret replied, folding her hands. "But not as a team. This time I want to see who truly has what it takes. Consider it a test." Emma felt her pulse quicken. "A test?" she asked. Margaret smiled faintly. "You've both proven yourselves here in Los Angeles. But to be a partner, you need more than skill. You need instinct, empathy, adaptability. The family who owns that land will decide who they sell to. You'll have to win their trust, not just their signature." For a moment, silence filled the room. The air was charged, thick with challenge. "So, we're competitors," Mason said finally, his voice smooth as ever. Margaret's smile widened. "Competitors and observers. I'll be watching closely to see who handles this with integrity. The board will, too." Emma nodded, masking her nerves behind a composed expression. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning," Margaret replied. "I suggest you start packing." That evening, Emma sat alone at her apartment, city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls. The view that once thrilled her now felt empty. She tried calling a few friends to celebrate the opportunity, but every number led to voicemail. Everyone was busy. Or maybe she had simply drifted too far from them. Her eyes landed on an old photo frame on the shelf, a picture of 2 college girls grinning under palm trees, arms around each other, wind in their hair. Noelani, her best friend from university, now living in Hawaii. It had been years, too many. Before she could overthink it, Emma dialed the number she still somehow remembered. "Emma." The voice on the other end was warm, surprised, familiar. "Noelani. I can't believe it still works." "Of course it does. You think I'd ever delete my favorite overachiever's number?" They both laughed, and for a moment, Emma felt 20 again. But soon the laughter faded, replaced by memories that still stung. The breakup with John, the nights she buried herself in work to forget him. The way her dreams of doing something meaningful had been replaced by numbers, deadlines, and deals. So, Noelani said softly. You're finally coming to the islands. Emma hesitated. Maybe. There's a project there. My company wants to acquire a property. Oh, Noelani replied, her tone careful. Be kind to the land, Em. Some things shouldn't be bought. I know, Emma said, though she didn't. But it's just business. Maybe, Noelani said. But sometimes business has a soul, whether we see it or not. When the call ended, Emma stayed by the window, the sound of city traffic echoing below. The light on her desk flickered softly against the picture of her and Noelani, frozen in time. She traced the outline of her younger self, the one who used to dream of changing the world, not owning it. That night, she packed her suitcase, but as she folded her clothes into neat, perfect lines, something inside her whispered that this trip would be different. She couldn't say why. She only knew one thing for certain. For the first time in a very long time, she was nervous. The next morning, Emma woke before dawn. The Los Angeles skyline stretched out beneath her penthouse balcony, shimmering with early light. She stood there for a while, coffee in hand, as planes crossed the orange horizon, reminders of how far she'd come, and how far she might still fall. By the time she reached the office, Mason was already there, leaning against her desk as if he owned it. Morning, sunshine, he said. I was starting to think you'd leave all the paradise to me. Don't flatter yourself, she replied, sliding past him to grab a folder. I just needed to confirm a few details before we fly halfway across the Pacific. Mason chuckled, following her toward the conference room. Details? You mean the part where you're secretly terrified of losing to me? Emma stopped, looked at him sharply, but his grin disarmed her before she could retort. He wasn't wrong. Losing wasn't part of her vocabulary. Still, something about the way he said it, teasing, almost affectionate, made her heart skip once, then steady itself again. Inside the glass-walled conference room, Margaret Lane stood waiting. The woman exuded calm authority, her presence commanding yet composed. Emma, Mason, she greeted. I trust you're both ready. A large map of Hawaii lay spread across the table, dotted with colored pins. Margaret tapped one of them, her manicured nail resting over the island of Oahu. The property sits here, she said. A stretch of land owned by the Maleko family for generations. It's stunning, remote, and ideal for development, but it comes with complications. What kind of complications? Emma asked. Margaret's gaze flickered briefly toward her. Emotional ones. The family doesn't want to sell, but they owe a considerable tax lien. The government will auction the property if it's not paid. Corporations can't bid, which means we need private buyers. You'll both go as individuals. Emma frowned. So you want us to pretend this is personal? Exactly, Margaret said smoothly. You'll each act as independent investors. The family will choose who they trust more. The board wants to see how you handle it gracefully, strategically. Mason leaned back in his chair. So, in short, we're both sharks in paradise. Margaret's eyes narrowed. I prefer to think of you as ambassadors. Remember, perception is everything. This deal could secure your future, or end it. Emma glanced down at the map again. The blue expanse surrounding the tiny island seemed to shimmer, like a secret waiting beneath the surface. When do we leave? She asked. Tomorrow, Margaret said. And Emma, one more thing. Emma looked up. You've earned every success you've had here. But Hawaii isn't Los Angeles. People there see through facades. They listen not to words, but to hearts. Don't forget that. Hours later, Emma sat alone at the airport lounge, staring at her reflection in the glass wall. For once, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. The heels, the tailored jacket, the polished hair, they all felt like armor. Necessary, but heavy. Mason arrived with 2 coffees, placing one in front of her without asking. Black. No sugar. You haven't changed, he said. Neither have you, she replied. Oh, I've changed plenty, he said, settling beside her. You just never noticed. She looked at him, caught off guard by the sincerity in his tone. But before she could say anything, the boarding call echoed through the terminal. "Guess that's us," he said lightly, grabbing his bag, ready to trade concrete for palm trees. Emma forced a smile. "I'm ready for whatever it takes." But her voice carried an uncertainty she couldn't hide. The flight was long and quiet. Mason slept, his head tilted back, while Emma gazed out the window at the endless ocean below. Clouds drifted like slow-moving ships, and she wondered, not for the first time, if her life had become too small, too confined by ambition, to feel anything real. She thought about Noelani's words. Some things shouldn't be bought. For a brief second, she imagined standing barefoot on the sand, wind in her hair, her phone miles away. The image felt like a memory from another life, a life she might have lived if she'd chosen differently. Then Mason stirred beside her. "You, okay?" She blinked, startled. "Just thinking. That's dangerous," he teased. "You might start enjoying yourself." She smirked. "Not likely." But when the plane descended, and the Emerald Islands appeared, billowings of coral glowing around turquoise lagoons, something inside her shifted. The colors felt alive. The air, even through the window, seemed different. The airport smelled of salt and hibiscus. Outside, the wind carried the sound of laughter, of music, of waves breaking against shore. Mason handled the luggage while Emma stood still, overwhelmed by a feeling she couldn't name. "This is it," he said, pulling the last suitcase from the carousel. "Your paradise test run." "Don't call it paradise," she murmured. "It feels sacred." He raised an eyebrow. "You really think a beach is sacred?" But Emma didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the sun dipped low, painting the ocean in molten gold. Something about that moment, the warmth, the sound, the scent felt like a whisper she couldn't quite hear, a calling, faint but insistent. That night, in her hotel room overlooking the water, Emma tried to sleep but couldn't. The rhythm of the waves seemed to echo inside her, steady and alive. She stood by the balcony, watching distant torches flicker along the beach below. Her phone buzzed. A message from Margaret. "Remember, observe, learn, adapt. The one who wins their hearts wins everything." Emma turned off the screen, the words fading into darkness. Outside, the ocean kept whispering, and though she didn't know why, she suddenly felt that her life was about to change forever. The morning sun spilled through gauzy curtains, painting streaks of gold across the white linens of Emma's hotel room. For the first time in years, she woke without the harsh sound of an alarm. The air smelled of salt and plumeria, and the hum of the ocean below was so peaceful that for a fleeting second, she forgot why she was there. Then her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Reality, right on schedule. A text from Mason. "Meeting with the property rep at 10. Don't be late, boss lady." She sighed, replying with a curt, "See you there," before tossing the phone aside. But as she walked to the balcony and gazed out at the endless horizon, something stirred inside her, a longing she couldn't quite name. The light, the stillness, the raw beauty it all felt. Too honest. Almost invasive, like the island was seeing through her. She needed air. Not the filtered kind she was used to breathing between boardroom walls, but the kind that smelled of earth and ocean. The streets near the hotel were alive with color vendors selling leis, families laughing, waves rolling rhythmically in the distance. Emma felt out of place in her crisp linen suit, her heels sinking slightly into the soft sand as she cut through a beachside path. A familiar voice called from behind her. "Emma Carter, is that really you?" She turned, startled. A woman stood beneath a palm tree, dark hair woven into a loose braid, sun on her skin, eyes shining with warmth. "Noelani." They both laughed as they embraced, the years collapsing in an instant. "It's been forever," Noelani said, pulling back to study her. You look like Los Angeles, and you look like paradise," Emma replied. They sat on a weathered bench overlooking the ocean. For a while, they didn't speak, just watched the waves rise and fall like the breath of the island itself. So, Noelani finally said, You're really here for work? Emma hesitated. Yeah. There's a property your government is auctioning soon. My company's trying to buy it, Noelani finished, her smile softening. Everyone on the island knows. It's the Maliko land. That family's been here longer than anyone can remember. You know them. Everyone knows them. The land they live on, it's not just dirt and trees. It's heritage. Generations of prayer and blood in that soil. Losing it would be like losing a heartbeat. Emma looked down at her hands. I didn't come here to take anyone's heartbeat. I know, Noelani said gently. But business has a way of pretending it's harmless. The words hit harder than Emma expected. For a moment, she couldn't respond. Her mind drifted back to the version of herself that once dreamed of designing sustainable housing, of helping communities, not consuming them. Somewhere along the way, she'd traded purpose for prestige. They walked through the marketplace together, laughing between stalls of fresh mango, hand-woven baskets, and ukuleles strumming from a corner. Noelani bought 2 coconut waters and handed one to Emma. I still can't believe you're here, Noelani said. After John, I didn't think you'd ever leave the mainland. The mention of his name hit like a quiet wave. Emma froze, eyes fixed on the rippling ocean beyond the stalls. It's been years, she said. I know, but grief has its own calendar. Emma swallowed hard. He moved on, married, started a family. And you? Noelani asked softly. Did you ever move on? Emma hesitated. I moved forward. That's not the same thing. Noelani smiled sadly. You always were good at building walls and calling them progress. Maybe, Emma said. But walls keep things in place, or keep life out. Noelani whispered. For a while, they stood in silence, watching surfers carve through distant waves. A group of children laughed nearby, chasing each other across the sand. Their joy felt contagious, untamed like something Emma had forgotten how to feel. Noelani turned to her suddenly. You should come by the house tonight. Kenny's making dinner. The kids would love to meet you. You need some aloha in your system. Emma smiled. What's aloha really? Noelani laughed. That's the question of a lifetime. It's love, kindness, peace, but also truth. You'll feel it when you're ready. That evening, the sky blazed orange as Emma followed a winding road up the hillside toward Noelani's home. The air grew cooler, scented with wild ginger and rain. The house was simple but full of life-wind chimes, children's drawings, the hum of conversation. Noelani's husband, Kenny, greeted her with a warm handshake and a knowing smile. So, this is the famous Emma Carter, he said. The woman who never sleeps. Not true, Emma replied, laughing lightly. I sleep sometimes. With my phone. That explains a lot, he teased. Dinner was served outside, under string lights that swayed gently in the breeze. The children ran around barefoot, their laughter echoing through the night. For the first time in years, Emma felt like she belonged somewhere without needing to earn it. As the meal ended, Noelani leaned closer. You know, you don't have to run so fast all the time. The world won't disappear if you stop moving. Emma smiled faintly. Stopping is dangerous. That's when you start feeling things. Maybe that's exactly what you need, Noelani said. Emma looked out at the ocean, shimmering under moonlight. I'm not sure I remember how. Noelani placed a gentle hand on her arm. Then let the island remind you. Later, as Emma drove back to her hotel, the words echoed in her mind. Let the island remind you. The wind rushed through the open car window, carrying scents of sea and earth, music and memory. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't fill the silence with plans or thoughts or worry. She just listened. And somewhere, between the hum of the engine and the crash of the distant waves, it felt like the island whispered back. The road curved along the coastline like a ribbon of light. On one side, the ocean stretched endlessly, a living mirror of sky and color. On the other, cliffs rose in green majesty, their peaks crowned by mist. Emma had seen luxury beaches before, resorts polished into perfection, But this was different. This was raw, sacred, almost untouchable. Mason whistled from the driver's seat. "Not a bad view for a battlefield," he said. Emma rolled her eyes. "It's not a battlefield. Come on, Cotter. You and I both know it is." He smiled sideways, sunlight cutting across his face. There was something easy about Mason, too easy. He treated every challenge like a game, every risk like a thrill. But Emma wasn't here to play. This trip, this competition, it was her last step before a partnership. Failure wasn't an option. Still, as the car wound through the palm-lined road, she couldn't help but feel small. The land itself seemed alive, breathing, listening. They reached a wooden gate framed by old stone pillars. A faded sign read, Malaiko Estate. Mason parked, straightening his tie like he was about to walk into a boardroom, instead of someone's ancestral home. "You ready to charm a family out of their heritage?" he said. Emma frowned. "Do you ever stop being cynical?" "Only when it stops working." They stepped out, the scent of earth and ocean filling the air. Birds darted between banana leaves, and somewhere in the distance came the soft rhythm of drums, faint, ancient, and haunting. A woman appeared near the house, older, proud, her long silver hair braided down her back. Her eyes were sharp as flint. "You're the visitors from the mainland," she said. "Yes, ma'am," Emma began politely. "My name is, I know who you are," the woman interrupted. "The ones who came to buy what cannot be bought." Mason's practiced smile faltered. "We just want to discuss possibilities." "There is nothing to discuss," she said flatly. "The land is not for sale. It belongs to our ancestors, and to those yet to come." She turned and walked away, leaving them in the heavy silence of rejection. Mason exhaled, muttering under his breath, "Well, that went great." Emma didn't respond. She was staring beyond the gate, at the stretch of green that rolled toward the cliffs and the sea. The wind moved through the tall grass like breath. She felt something stir inside her, something she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't ambition, it was reverence. They drove back in silence. The air between them was thick, not with rivalry, but with something neither wanted to name. Back at the hotel, Emma dropped her bag by the door and stepped out onto the balcony. The ocean shimmered under the late afternoon light, and from below drifted the sound of a guitar, soft and melodic. She followed it down to the main lawn, where guests were gathering. A young man stood at the microphone, introducing the evening's performers. His presence was calm but magnetic, tall, sun-kissed skin, dark hair tied loosely at his neck. "Good evening, everyone," he said with a warm smile. "My name is Kai Malaiko. Welcome to our island." Emma froze. Malaiko, the same name as the family she and Mason were sent to convince. Kai gestured toward a woman stepping onto the small stage, a hula dancer dressed in flowing white. "Tonight, she'll share with you a story told through movement, a story of love, loss, and renewal." Music began, gentle drums, the whisper of ukulele strings, the rise of a haunting melody. The dancers' movements were fluid, graceful, each motion telling a tale that words could never hold. Emma stood transfixed. There was no performance in it, no pretense, only truth. The sway of her hips, the sweep of her arms, it felt like watching the ocean speak. For the first time in a long time, Emma's chest tightened, not with stress, with feeling. When the song ended, applause erupted, but Emma couldn't move. Something inside her had cracked open. "Beautiful, isn't it?" She turned. It was Kai. He had appeared beside her quietly, his presence grounded and steady. Up close, his eyes were a shade of brown that caught the last of the sunset, calm, deep, and searching. "Yes," she said softly. "It was beyond beautiful." He smiled. "That's what hula is meant to do. Remind you that beauty isn't something you see. It's something you remember." Emma tilted her head. "You really believe that?" "Of course," he said. "You don't. I'm not sure I remember how to believe in anything that isn't measurable." Kai studied her for a moment. Then maybe the island brought you here to learn. Later that night, Emma lay awake in bed, the sound of waves spilling through her open window. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dancer, the movement, the grace, and Kai's words echoing softly in her mind. Maybe the island brought you here to learn. She tried to shake it off. She was here for work, for the promotion, for success. But when she reached for her phone to check emails, she found she didn't want to. The glow of the screen felt wrong against the glow of the night. So instead, she turned off the lamp, closed her eyes, and listened. Outside, the sea breathed against the shore, ancient, steady, eternal. And somewhere within that rhythm, Emma felt it again. That whisper she couldn't quite name, like the island was speaking. Morning light spilled through the blinds as Emma tightened her ponytail and straightened her blazer. Her reflection in the mirror looked sharp, composed, and entirely out of place against the soft hum of the island beyond the window. Today wasn't for beaches or sunsets, it was for business. Mason was waiting downstairs, leaning casually against the rental car, sunglasses perched on his head. "You ready for round 2? He asked. Emma forced a confident smile. "Let's just hope they're more receptive in daylight," he laughed. "You're adorable when you're optimistic." The drive back to the Maliko property was quiet, except for the rustle of wind through palm trees. The land grew wilder the farther they went, untamed greenery stretching toward the horizon. The closer they came, the stronger the air seemed to pulse with a presence that wasn't visible but undeniably real. When they arrived, a few locals were gathered near the entrance, men repairing a fence, children running barefoot in the red dirt, and an elderly woman arranging leis by a small altar near the gate. Emma stepped out carefully, aware of every eye turning toward her. "Let me do the talking this time," Mason murmured. "You did the talking last time," she replied. "Exactly," he said with a smirk. "That's why I know what not to say." Before she could answer, a voice called out from behind the group. "Back again." Howley's Emma turned. The same silver-haired woman from before, proud and unflinching. This time, a younger man stood beside her, Kai. For a moment, Emma forgot to breathe. He looked different in the morning light, barefoot, tanned, his calmness framed by the movement of the trees behind him. He nodded politely. "You didn't mention you were here for business last night." "I didn't realize it was your family's land," Emma said quickly. "I didn't mean to mislead you." Kai's expression remained unreadable. "Intentions are like footprints in the sand," he said quietly. "They don't last long against the tide." The older woman, Lonnie, Emma realized, crossed her arms. "You come to take what generations have cared for. You say you bring opportunity, but what you really bring is silence, where there used to be song." Emma stepped forward, her voice steady. "I understand how it looks, but we're offering fair value. Enough to clear all debts, and you cannot buy what is sacred," Lonnie interrupted. "This land isn't dying. It's alive. It just needs people who remember how to listen." Mason exhaled loudly beside her. "Look, with all due respect, this is about economics, not emotions." Kai's gaze hardened. "And that's exactly why you'll never understand." For a moment, silence fell, heavy and charged. The wind stirred through the tall grass, and the ocean roared faintly in the distance, as if echoing Kai's words. Emma turned toward Mason. "Maybe we should give them space." But he shook his head. "We're wasting time, Emma. Either they sell or they don't." He started to walk toward the house. Kai moved instinctively to block his way. "Stop," he said. Mason froze. "What? Are you threatening me now?" "I'm protecting what's ours." Emma stepped between them. "Enough. Mason, please just wait in the car." The tension hung in the air a second longer before Mason finally turned away, muttering something under his breath. Emma faced Kai again. "I'm sorry. He doesn't understand the culture here." Kai's voice softened slightly. "Most people don't. They come, they take pictures, they build walls, and they call it progress. Then they leave and wonder why they still feel empty." She hesitated. Not everyone wants to take. Some people just don't know how to give. Kai looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time, there was something like compassion in his eyes. Maybe that's true, he said quietly. That afternoon, Emma wandered along the edge of the property alone. Mason had gone back to the hotel, fuming about wasting time with stubborn locals, but she couldn't bring herself to leave yet. The land felt different now, more personal. She could see what Kai meant. The trees swayed like they were breathing. The scent of hibiscus and ocean mixed into something almost holy. She heard footsteps behind her. You came back, Kai said. I wanted to understand, she replied. He studied her, arms crossed. Understand what? What this land means to you. He walked past her and gestured toward the cliffs. My grandfather planted those trees. My mother taught children to dance in that clearing. My family buried their stories here. Every rock, every leaf, it remembers. Emma watched his face as he spoke. The quiet pride, the grief hidden beneath. If you lose it, she began. Kai shook his head. We won't, even if the papers say otherwise. For a while, they stood side by side in silence. The waves crashed below like the steady beat of a heart. I'm sorry, Emma said at last. For what we're trying to do, you're doing your job, Kai replied. But sometimes, doing your job and doing what's right aren't the same thing. His words lingered like salt on the air. By sunset, Emma returned to her room, her thoughts tangled. Mason was pacing by the window, laptop open, spreadsheets glowing. Finally, he said, I've been calling you for hours. Did you get anything useful? No, she said. Not yet. Then, tomorrow, we push harder. Mason, she said carefully, maybe pushing isn't the way. He looked at her, genuinely surprised. Who are you, and what have you done with Emma Carter? She didn't answer. Her eyes drifted to the balcony, where the sea glowed red beneath the fading light. Maybe Kai was right. Maybe she had forgotten how to listen. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The rhythm of the ocean filled her room, the same steady pulse that seemed to echo inside her chest. She stood by the window, gazing at the dark horizon. For the first time in years, Emma felt unsure of who she was and what she truly wanted. Somewhere out there, the island seemed to breathe, waiting. And though she didn't know it yet, tomorrow would bring the first sign that her heart was beginning to change. The next morning, the rain came softly, not the kind that darkens the sky, but the kind that refreshes it. Drops tapped against Emma's window like a heartbeat, rhythmic and calm. She stood there barefoot, coffee in hand, watching the clouds drift low over the ocean. It was strange how even the rain felt alive here. Every sound, every scent, all of it seemed to breathe. She hadn't realized until now how much noise her life used to have. Meetings, deadlines, constant conversation that filled every empty space so she didn't have to hear herself think. But here, silence wasn't empty. It was full. Her phone buzzed, breaking the moment. A message from Noelani. Brunch today. No excuses. Bring your appetite, and maybe your heart too. Emma smiled, shaking her head. Noelani always had a way of saying too much in a single sentence. The cafe was tucked away behind a wall of bougainvillea, open to the sea breeze and filled with the scent of roasted coffee beans and fresh papaya. Noelani waved from a corner table, her laughter already drawing looks from nearby tourists. Look at you, she said, as Emma sat down. You're starting to get color again. La was turning you gray. Emma laughed. It was the office lighting. Unhung, Noelani teased. Sure. They ordered pancakes with coconut syrup and local fruit. Between bites, Noelani leaned forward, her tone turning gentle. So, how's the project going? Emma hesitated. Complicated. Complicated how? I met the family. The matriarch hates us. The son Kaiwell, he doesn't seem to hate me. But he definitely doesn't trust me. Noelani's brows lifted slightly. Kai Maleko, you know him. Everyone knows him, she said. He's one of those people who carries the island in his bones. He helps with the Halau, the dance school his mother runs. Kind heart. Tough shell. Emma nodded slowly. That sounds about right. Noelani watched her for a long moment, then smiled knowingly. You've got that look. What look? The one you get when someone's under your skin. Emma scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. He barely speaks to me. Maybe that's why. Emma rolled her eyes, but she couldn't hide her grin. You haven't changed at all. And you have, Noelani said softly. In good ways. You just don't see it yet. After brunch, they walked along the beach. The rain had cleared, leaving the sand damp and glistening. Children built castles near the water, their laughter echoing through the salt air. Noelani stopped to watch them. You know, when I first moved back here, I felt lost, she said. I kept comparing everything to the city, the pace, the purpose, the noise. But then, one morning, I woke up and realized I didn't need to chase peace. It was already here. I just had to stop running from it. Emma gazed out at the horizon. I wouldn't even know where to start. Maybe stop trying to start. Just be. The words lingered like the tide, gentle but persistent. Emma thought of Kai, of the way he looked at the land, the reverence in his voice when he spoke about things she couldn't measure or quantify. He wasn't trying to sell her anything. He was just present. And maybe that was what she'd forgotten how to be. That evening, Emma returned to her room, but the silence felt heavier than usual. Mason had left a note under her door. Dinner, meeting with investors at 8. Be there. M. She stared at the paper for a long moment before folding it and setting it aside. She couldn't do another evening of numbers and projections. Not tonight. Instead, she found herself wandering outside, barefoot, following the faint sound of music. Down by the beach, a small group had gathered around a bonfire. Locals, mostly. Someone strummed a guitar, others sang softly in Hawaiian, their harmonies rising and falling like waves. Emma stood at the edge of the circle, unsure if she should step closer. Then a voice behind her said, "You're welcome to join. You know, Kai." He was standing a few feet away, barefoot, his expression calm but unreadable in the flicker of the flames. "I didn't want to intrude," she said. He shook his head. "This island doesn't belong to anyone. You can't intrude on something that already includes you." He motioned for her to sit. She hesitated, then lowered herself onto the sand. For a while, they just listened to the music, the soft strum of guitar, the rhythm of waves, the hum of voices blending with the wind. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Kai nodded. "It's not a performance, it's connection. The songs we sing, they're prayers as much as melodies." Emma turned to look at him, his face lit softly by the fire. "You really believe everything is sacred, don't you?" He smiled faintly. "Not everything, but everything has meaning, if you look close enough." She stared into the flames, his words sinking deeper than she expected. "I'm not sure I know how to see that kind of meaning anymore," she said quietly. "Then stop looking," Kai said. "Just feel." Later that night, when the fire had burned low and the crowd had thinned, Emma walked back along the shoreline alone. The moon was high, silvering the water, and every step she took left a glowing trace in the wet sand. She stopped and closed her eyes, breathing in the ocean air. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about tomorrow. Not about deadlines, promotions, or proving herself. She was just there, small beneath an infinite sky, her heart steady with the rhythm of the waves. And though she didn't fully understand it yet, something in her had begun to shift. The island was no longer just a place. It was a mirror. And in its reflection, Emma was starting to see who she really was. The morning sun shimmered on the water like liquid glass. Emma stood on her balcony, watching paddleboarders glide across the calm surface, their silhouettes cutting through the light. Somewhere below, she could hear faint music drifting up from the hotel's courtyard, soft drums, a ukulele, and a woman's voice, singing words she didn't understand but somehow felt. It was supposed to be another day of negotiations. Mason had already left to meet with an agent in town, his determination sharpened after yesterday's failure. But Emma couldn't bring herself to go. Not yet. She needed something different today, something real. By late morning, she found herself wandering near the resort's garden, following the sound of laughter and applause. A small crowd had gathered on the lawn, tourists watching as a man led a group of volunteers in a hula demonstration. Kai, he was dressed casually this time, a plain white shirt, shorts, no microphone, just his voice carrying over the wind. His movements were easy, effortless, like the rhythm flowed straight through him. "All right," he said with a grin, "any brave souls willing to join me?" A few hesitant hands rose. Then his eyes landed on her. "Ah," he said, smiling faintly. "Even better. Our guest from the city has returned." The crowd turned. Emma froze. "Oh, no, I..." But before she could finish, a cheer rose from the group, and someone gently nudged her forward. Kai extended his hand, and something in his gaze, steady, warm, teasing, made it impossible to refuse. "Don't overthink," he said softly as she approached. "Just move." The first few steps were awkward. Her body was stiff, her mind racing. Every gesture felt wrong, every motion too forced. Kai moved beside her, patient and calm. "Start with your feet," he said quietly. "Hula begins from the ground. Feel it." She hesitated, then followed his rhythm side to side, slow and deliberate. The grass brushed her ankles, the sun warmed her shoulders. "Good," he said. "Now your hands, they tell the story." He lifted his arms gracefully, the movements fluid, circular. She mirrored him, clumsy at first, but growing steadier. "What story are we telling?" she asked breathlessly. He smiled. "One of homecoming." Something inside her trembled. She didn't know why. The music swelled, and the crowd clapped along. For a moment, the air shimmered laughter, sunlight waves in the distance, and the heartbeat of the drums all blending into one rhythm. And then, just like that, she forgot the steps, the audience, the purpose. She simply moved her body, guided by something older than memory. When the song ended, the applause broke through like thunder. Emma's cheeks flushed as she laughed, slightly out of breath. Kai bowed playfully toward her. "You survived." "Barely," she said, smiling. He leaned closer. "You didn't just survive, Emma. You remembered?" "Remembered what?" "What it feels like to be alive." Later, as the crowd dispersed, Kai found her sitting beneath a palm tree, shoes in hand, hair loosened by the wind. "You did well," he said, handing her a bottle of water. "I made a fool of myself. You made a connection. That's rarer." She looked at him curiously. "Do you really believe dancing can change something inside a person?" Kai's gaze wandered toward the ocean. Hula isn't just dance, it's prayer. Every movement speaks to the land, the wind, the ancestors. It teaches humility, how to listen instead of command. He turned back to her. "People come here thinking they can take pieces of Hawaii home with them. But this place doesn't belong to anyone. It lives in moments like that, when you stop fighting and just feel." Emma sat quietly, his words echoing in her mind. "Maybe I've been fighting too long," she said finally. "Maybe you've just forgotten you were allowed to rest." That evening, the hotel hosted its sunset luau on the beach. Torches flickered, and guests gathered around tables set with orchids and candles. Emma stood at the edge of the crowd, unsure if she belonged there. Then she saw her, the same dancer from the first night, moving like wind and fire beneath the setting sun. The song was slow, mournful, full of longing. Kai stood nearby, watching too. When the performance ended, the dancer approached and embraced him briefly, before walking away. "She's incredible," Emma said. Kai nodded. "She's my cousin. She dances what others are afraid to feel." "What does that mean?" He looked at her. "It means you can't fake emotion here. The island knows when you're pretending." Emma smiled faintly. "That's bad news for someone like me." "Then stop pretending," he said simply. They watched the horizon together as the sun sank into the ocean, painting the sky in crimson and gold. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Emma said quietly, "I don't remember the last time I felt peace like this." Kai turned to her. "Peace isn't found, Emma. It's remembered, just like Hula." That night, back in her room, she couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed the movements of the dance, the warmth of the sun, the sound of his voice. She stood barefoot on the balcony, imitating the motions he'd shown her, awkwardly, shyly, alone. Her hands moved through the air, tracing invisible stories, and though no music played, she could still feel it, that rhythm that wasn't in her ears but in her chest. She closed her eyes. For a moment, it felt as though the island was breathing with her. The next morning, Emma woke to the sound of waves crashing just beyond her window. The air was warm and heavy with salt. She had planned to meet Mason at breakfast to discuss strategy, but his note on the counter said everything. Left early, going to the city offices, don't waste time with the locals. She folded the note slowly, feeling a quiet defiance bloom inside her. Instead of heading to a boardroom, she walked down the narrow path behind the hotel that led to the shore. The sand was still cool beneath her feet, the tide curling in gentle whispers. Farther down, she saw Kai standing barefoot near the water, watching the horizon. "You came," he said without turning. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here." "I'm always here," he said simply, his voice almost blending with the surf. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was full, alive. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," Emma began. "About connection. About remembering." Kai turned to her, his gaze calm but curious. "And I want to understand it. Really understand it. Will you teach me?" He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her intention. Finally, he nodded. "Meet me here tomorrow at sunrise. If you can wake up that early, I can," she said. "I'll believe it when I see it." He smiled, the kind of smile that made the world seem less heavy, and walked away, leaving her with the scent of salt and plumeria lingering in the air. When she arrived the next morning, the sky was still painted with faint strokes of lavender and gold. Kai was already there, drawing shapes in the sand with a small stick, symbols that looked ancient and precise. "What are those?" she asked. "Marks of gratitude," he said. "Before we begin, we thank the land. Always." He pressed his palms together and bowed his head, whispering something in Hawaiian. His voice was soft, reverent. When he finished, he looked at her. "Now you." "I don't know what to say then. Say what you feel." Emma hesitated, then closed her eyes. The air smelled of salt and sunrise. "Thank you," she whispered, "for letting me be here." When she opened her eyes again, he was smiling faintly. "That's enough." Their first lesson was simple, at least in theory. "Feet first," he said, tracing lines in the sand. "Always grounded. The land holds you." He showed her the movements, slowly, patiently. The rhythm of kaholo, the side steps, the sway of ka'o, the motion of the hips like the tide. She followed, clumsy at first, laughing when her balance faltered. Kai chuckled. "You think too much. I'm used to that being an advantage." "Not here," he said. "Here, thinking just gets in the way." He stepped behind her, guiding her hands through the air. His touch was light, steady, grounding. "Each gesture is a word," he said quietly near her ear. "Each motion tells a story. You don't move to impress. You move to speak." Emma's pulse quickened, not from embarrassment, but from something else entirely. The warmth of his hand, the rhythm of his breath, the sound of the waves, it all seemed to blend into a single heartbeat. "I'm not sure I have a story to tell," she said softly. "Everyone does," he replied. "You've just forgotten yours." They practiced until the sun climbed high, painting their shadows long on the sand. By the time they stopped, her skin glistened, her heart full. Kai handed her a small bottle of water. "You did well." "I felt ridiculous," she said, laughing. "Good," he said. That means you let go of control for a moment. She sank down onto the sand beside him, still catching her breath. You really think the island changes people? He looked out toward the ocean. It doesn't change them. It just strips away what doesn't belong. The rest was always there. Emma watched the waves roll in and retreat. And what happens when people leave? They carry the memory. If they're lucky, it carries them back. That evening, Emma skipped the investor dinner Mason had arranged. Instead, she walked alone to the cove near the cliffs, where she and Kai had trained that morning. The tide had risen, and the sand where they had stood was now kissed by foam. She pressed her toes into the wet surface, closing her eyes. Her body moved instinctively, a slow repetition of the steps he had taught her. The motions were imperfect, but sincere, hands tracing invisible stories in the air, hips swaying with the wind. She didn't realize she wasn't alone until she heard his voice. Not bad for someone who thought hula was just a dance. Kai stood near the edge of the rocks, smiling. She laughed, a little embarrassed. You're spying on me now? I live here, he said, stepping closer. You're the one invading sacred ground. I thought you said I was part of it. You are, that's why I didn't stop you. The waves crashed gently behind them, and for a heartbeat, time seemed to pause. The world reduced to the two of them and the sea. I don't know what's happening to me, Emma admitted. I came here to win a deal, and now everything I thought I knew feels wrong. Maybe it's not wrong, Kai said. Maybe it's just not real anymore. She looked up at him, and for a moment, the air between them felt charged, something unspoken flickering in the space where words would ruin it. He broke the tension first, his voice softer now. Tomorrow, I'll teach you the song that goes with the dance. It's how you learn the meaning behind the motion. And what's the song about? She asked. Kai smiled. You'll find out when you're ready. That night, back in her room, Emma couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the ocean, the movement of his hands, the way he looked at her when he said, "You're ready." For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about achievement or success. She was thinking about meaning. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the noise and ambition, a new rhythm had begun to stir, steady, ancient, and alive. Dawn unfolded slowly over the ocean, brushing gold across the restless waves. Emma walked along the sand with her shoes in hand, the cool grains sticking softly to her feet. The world felt suspended, as though time itself had slowed to listen. Kai was already waiting near the rocks, a woven mat rolled beneath his arm. You came early, he said. I didn't sleep much. That's usually what happens when the island starts speaking. He spread the mat on the sand and motioned for her to sit. The air smelled of salt and hibiscus, and the only sounds were the rustle of palms and the distant cry of seabirds. Before we dance today, he said, you have to understand what Keona means. Emma tilted her head. Hidden meaning, right? He nodded. Yes, but not hidden because it's secret, hidden because you have to feel it to see it. Every word, every gesture, every song carries layers of truth. The surface tells a story. The soul reveals another. He paused, then added softly, like people. Emma's breath caught for a moment. She knew he wasn't just talking about hula. Kai reached for a small wooden instrument beside him, a simple drum carved from a coconut shell. He struck it lightly, the sound deep and earthy. This is the heartbeat, he said. The rhythm of the land. Every dancer must hear it before she moves. He began to chant in Hawaiian, his voice low and melodic, the cadence both strange and familiar. Emma didn't understand the words, but something in the tone resonated inside her, ancient, intimate, unbroken. When he stopped, she found herself whispering, what does it mean? Kai looked at her gently. It means, the ocean gives, the land remembers, and the heart must listen. He stood and offered her his hand. Now, we dance. The first steps came easier than before. Her feet moved in time with the steady beat of the drum, her arms flowing like water. The world around her began to fade, the horizon, the sound of the sea. even her own thoughts. There was only rhythm. Good, Kai said softly. Now, the hands tell the ocean what it means to you. She hesitated, then lifted her arms, letting instinct guide her. Her movements became smaller, slower, almost prayerful. Each motion felt like confession, the ache of lost years, the loneliness she had carried, the ambition that had stolen her peace. When the music faded, silence filled the air, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything she'd never said aloud. Kai stepped closer. You found it, he said quietly. Found what? The Kiona, the truth beneath the motion. Emma's eyes stung. It felt like I was remembering something I never knew I'd forgotten. He nodded. That's what truth feels like. They sat down again, both breathing heavily. For a while, neither spoke. The tide reached closer to their feet, cool and insistent. Kai, she said finally, how did you learn all this? The stories, the songs. My mother, he said softly. She's a Kumu hula, a teacher. She taught me that dance isn't performance, it's legacy. She must be proud of you, Emma said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. She was, once. He picked up a piece of driftwood and began tracing circles in the sand. My father wasn't from here. He came from the mainland, chasing something, money, I think. He didn't understand this place. When he left, my mother told me that part of him stayed in me, the part she could never trust. Emma felt her chest tighten. I'm sorry, he shrugged. It's all right. We both made peace with our ghosts, or we thought we did. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the air between them seemed to still. I think you understand more than you realize, he said. I'm not sure I do. You came here chasing success, he said quietly, but the island doesn't care about titles or awards. It only asks if you can be honest. Emma looked away, her throat tightening. I don't know if I can. You already are, he said simply. Every time you dance, you're telling the truth. The sun had climbed high by the time they finished their practice. Kai gathered his things, but before leaving, he reached into his satchel and pulled out a folded piece of cloth. A simple wrap skirt, hand-dyed in deep ocean blue. What's this? She asked. It's called a pau, he said. It's what hula dancers wear. This one belonged to me, when I was still learning. I can't take that, she said, startled. You're not taking it, he replied. You're continuing it. He placed it gently in her hands, his fingers brushing hers. The touch lingered, deliberate, electric. Wear it tomorrow, he said. The next lesson is different. What's different about it? He smiled faintly. You'll see. Then, he walked away, leaving her standing in the sunlight, the fabric pressed against her heart like a promise. That evening, Emma returned to her room, still holding the pau. She unfolded it carefully, letting the light catch the woven patterns. Each thread seemed alive, vibrant, deliberate, filled with care. When she lifted it to her face, she could smell the faint scent of salt and earth of Kai, of the ocean, of something ancient and real. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Mason. Big meeting tomorrow. Don't skip this one. She stared at the screen for a long time, before turning it face down on the table. The ocean roared softly beyond the balcony, a sound like the heartbeat of the island. She held the fabric closer and whispered to no one, I'm not skipping anything. I'm just finally showing up. Outside, thunder rumbled far away over the sea. The wind lifted through the palms, carrying the faint scent of rain. And somewhere in the distance, Kai looked out toward the same horizon, sensing that something had shifted in her, in him, in everything. The tide was rising. The sky over the island had darkened by the time Emma arrived for her next lesson. Clouds gathered heavy and low, pressing against the mountains. The air smelled of rain and tension. Kai was waiting beneath a large banyan tree near the shore, the pau skirt she now wore brushing softly against her legs as she approached. You came, he said, smiling faintly. I told you I would. I wasn't sure, he said. Most people run when storms start brewing. Maybe I'm not most people, she replied. He studied her for a moment and nodded. No, you're not. They began to dance again, slower this time. The wind pulling at their hair, the first drops of rain speckling the sand. The rhythm of the drum echoed faintly from Kai's portable speaker, blending with the growing rumble of thunder. Let it move through you, Kai said. Don't resist the wind. Become part of it. Emma closed her eyes. The air wrapped around her like a pulse. She moved, not perfectly, but truthfully, her body swaying with the storm's rhythm. It felt as though something inside her had broken open, pouring out into every movement. When the rain came harder, Kai didn't stop. Neither did she. They danced in it to silhouettes against the gray horizon until their laughter replaced the sound of thunder. For a moment, there was no company, no competition, no deadline. There was only this, the storm, the earth beneath them, and the wild, impossible joy of being alive. When the music faded, Kai stepped closer, his voice low and steady. Now you understand, he said. Understand what? That sometimes, surrender is strength. Emma's chest rose and fell with her breath. She wanted to say something, but words felt too small, so she didn't. She just looked at him, and in the space between them, something wordless passed. Later that evening, she returned to the hotel soaked to the bone but glowing with energy she couldn't explain. Mason was waiting in the lobby, arms crossed, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw her, his expression hardened. Where the hell have you been? Out, she said simply. Out, Emma. We have a meeting with the board tomorrow morning. Margaret just called me. They're expecting results. He lowered his voice, stepping closer. I'm doing everything I can to make sure one of us gets that partnership. Don't blow it because you're too busy playing tourist. She met his gaze. I'm not playing tourist, Mason, really? Because it looks like you're spending more time with the locals than with the investors. Something sharp flickered in his tone, jealousy, or maybe suspicion. Don't do that, she said quietly. Do what? Twist this into something ugly, he scoffed. You used to be the most disciplined person I knew. Now you're distracted. It's not like you. Emma felt her throat tighten. Maybe it should be. That night, lightning flashed over the ocean. Emma sat by her window, watching the storm roll in, each strike illuminating the restless water. She couldn't shake Mason's words, or Kai's. Surrender is strength. But surrendering meant losing everything she had worked for. Everything she believed defined her. She thought of Margaret's voice echoing in her head. The one who wins their hearts wins everything. Was that what she was doing? Winning hearts, or losing hers? Her phone buzzed again. A new message from Kai. The Halau, my mother's school, is holding a small ceremony tomorrow. You should come. Emma's thumb hovered over the screen. She knew she shouldn't. She had a meeting with Margaret, a presentation, expectations to meet. And yet, she typed back, what time? The next day, she found the Halau, nestled at the foot of the mountains, surrounded by lush green, and the sound of water running through the rocks. The building was simple, wood, thatch, and open air, but it felt alive, humming with presence. Kai greeted her with a quiet nod. You came. I'm starting to make a habit of that. He led her inside, where a circle of dancers moved in unison, their feet bare, their hands painting stories in the air. At the center sat a woman Emma hadn't met before, regal, serene, her long silver hair tied back in a braid. When the dance ended, Kai approached her. This is my mother, Lonnie. Lonnie's eyes were steady as she studied Emma. So you're the one my son has been teaching. Yes, ma'am. And what have you learned? Emma hesitated. To listen. To what? To everything, she said quietly. Something softened in the older woman's face. Then perhaps there is hope for you yet. After the ceremony, Kai walked her to the edge of the clearing. The sky had cleared, and sunlight spilled through the leaves like fire. My mother doesn't invite outsiders often, he said. She must see something in you. Emma smiled faintly. I think she sees how lost I am. Lost isn't bad, Kai said. It just means you're on the edge of discovery. She looked at him, her voice trembling slightly. And what happens when I find it? Then you'll have to decide what to keep and what to let go. For a moment, the air between them shifted. He reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face, his hand lingering just long enough to make her heart stutter. Then he stepped back. Go, he said softly. You have a world waiting for you. But I'm not sure I want that world anymore, she whispered. Kai's expression deepened, somewhere between pain and longing. That's the beginning of change, he said. When Emma returned to the hotel, Mason was gone. Margaret's assistant had emailed her. The board meeting had been moved up. She stared at the screen, the words blurring. The island outside her window was still glowing from the rain. Waves rolled in endless rhythm, calling softly to the shore. And for the first time, Emma didn't know which world she belonged to, the one that paid her bills, or the one that had just begun to touch her soul. The storm outside had passed, but the one inside her had only just begun. The morning sun returned with ruthless brightness, as if mocking the storm that had passed. Emma sat at her desk, her laptop open, her fingers motionless on the keyboard. The presentation slides Mason had sent glowed across the screen. Graphs, numbers, projections, all perfectly polished, all meaningless. She stared at them until the words blurred, her chest tightening with a quiet ache she couldn't name. Somewhere below, the sea crashed against the shore, steady and unbothered. A knock on the door jolted her. Come in, she said. Mason entered, immaculate as always, suit pressed, tie sharp, confidence practiced. But there was something in his eyes this time. Impatience, maybe anger. You didn't show up for the board meeting, he said flatly. I told you I had another commitment. Another commitment. His tone sharpened. Emma, this deal could make or break us. Do you understand what you're risking? I do, she said quietly. Then help me understand why you're acting like you don't care. She turned to the window. Maybe I care about something else now. Something else. Mason stepped closer. Or someone else. Emma faced him slowly, meeting his stare. You've been following me. He didn't deny it. You disappear for hours. You avoid meetings, and you show up at family gatherings like you belong here. I had to see for myself what's going on. She took a step back, her pulse quickening. Mason, he cut her off. Don't bother denying it. I saw you. With him, the hula teacher. You think I didn't know who he was? His family owns the land we're after. And you're what, playing both sides? That's not what this is, she said sharply. Then what is it? Emma's voice trembled. It's real. Mason's laugh was hollow. Real? You've known the man for what, 2 weeks? And you're ready to throw your entire career away for a fling. It's not a fling, she said, her voice breaking. He's shown me more truth in 2 weeks than this company ever has in 10 years. For a moment, Mason looked genuinely hurt. So that's it? You've lost your mind? No, she said softly. I think I've finally found it. He stared at her for a long, cold moment. You're making a mistake, he said finally. And you're going to regret it. When he left, the silence in the room felt heavier than before. Emma didn't see him again that day. She walked along the beach as the afternoon sun burned low, the wind pulling at her hair. Her thoughts tangled like seaweed, fear, guilt, longing. She didn't know how to explain it. How the island had cracked something open in her. How Kai's voice, his patience, had shown her a world where success wasn't measured in profit, but in peace. She stopped near the waterline, staring at the horizon. The tide lapped at her feet, cool and constant. For the first time in her life, she didn't want to go back. Emma, she turned. Kai stood a few feet away, his eyes dark with worry. I heard what happened, he said. Mason came to see my mother. Emma froze. What? He told her everything. About you, about the company, about why you're here. Her breath caught. No, Kai's jaw tightened. She feels betrayed. She told me to keep my distance from you. I didn't know he would, Kai. I swear I wasn't. He raised a hand, stopping her. I don't know what to believe anymore. The words cut deeper than she expected. Please, she said softly, stepping closer. I came here for work, yes. But then I met you. And everything changed. I didn't plan this. Kai's voice was quiet, but there was pain in it. You don't plan the tide either. But it still leaves wreckage when it goes. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. You have to believe me. I want to, he said. But you work for the people trying to take my home. You say you feel connected, but connection means responsibility. He turned away, his voice breaking. You can't have both. She watched him walk down the beach until he disappeared into the curve of the shoreline. The wind lifted around her, carrying the scent of rain again. For a long moment, Emma stood frozen, the fabric of her POW clinging to her legs. Then, slowly, she knelt in the sand. Her hands dug into it, into the soil that had once been his childhood, his legacy. She pressed her palms against it like a prayer. I'm sorry, she whispered to the wind. I didn't mean to take. I just wanted to belong. The next day, the sky broke open. Rain poured over the island, heavy and relentless. Emma stayed inside her room, numb and hollow. Margaret arrived by afternoon, her voice filling the hallway before she even knocked. Emma, she said as she entered, what on earth is going on here? Emma didn't look up. I've just had the most uncomfortable call from the board, Margaret continued. Mason says you've compromised the deal. Emma finally turned to face her. Is that what he told you? It doesn't matter what he told me, Margaret said, her tone clipped. What matters is that you've jeopardized months of work. I brought you here because I believed in you. You're throwing it all away. I'm not throwing anything away, Emma said quietly. I'm choosing something different. Different. Margaret snapped. You think idealism pays the bills? You think these people will love you for trying to save their land? They'll still lose it eventually. At least we could have given them something for it. Emma's voice steadied. Maybe some things aren't meant to be bought. For a moment, Margaret stared at her, the anger fading into something almost like sorrow. You remind me of myself when I started, she said softly. But life doesn't reward purity, Emma. It rewards persistence. Emma met her gaze. Then I'll persist in something worth believing in. When Margaret left, the rain began to ease. Emma stepped out onto the balcony, her clothes damp with mist, her hair curling in the humidity. The storm had passed, but the world looked different now. Cleaner, raw, alive. She thought of Kai, of the look in his eyes when he said, you can't have both. Maybe he was right. Maybe she had to choose. And deep down, she already knew which world her heart was choosing. The island was quiet that morning. The storm had washed the world clean, leaving the air heavy with the scent of earth and renewal. Sunlight spilled through the clouds in pale ribbons, catching on the wet leaves like glass. Emma stood on the balcony, watching the light spread across the ocean. Every wave, every gust of wind felt alive. She had never seen color this vivid before, not in Los Angeles, not anywhere. It was as though the island itself was breathing again. She knew what she had to do. There was no strategy, no calculation left to make. Just the truth that had settled deep in her chest, calm and certain. She opened her laptop one last time. The numbers stared back at her, sterile and perfect, representing everything she had once thought she wanted. She began to type. A letter, short, clear, final. To Margaret and the board, effective immediately. I resign from my position at La Vista Developments. This project no longer aligns with what I believe in. Please consider this my formal notice. Emma Carter, she hit send before she could second guess it. For the first time in years, she felt something close to peace. When she stepped outside, the village was stirring. Children ran barefoot along the road, laughter carrying through the air. The scent of roasted breadfruit drifted from a nearby hut. Everything looked the same, yet she saw it differently now. Her car waited at the edge of the dirt road, but she didn't get in. Instead, she turned in the opposite direction, toward the mountains, toward the Maliko land. The walk took her nearly an hour. The path was muddy, the air thick, but she didn't mind. Every step felt necessary, a cleansing. When she reached the property's entrance, she saw Lonnie standing there, her long braid gleaming silver in the sun. "You came back," Lonnie said. "Yes," Emma replied softly. "I needed to." The older woman's eyes were sharp, but not unkind. "Why?" Emma swallowed. "To make things right." Lonnie studied her, then motioned toward the small wooden bench under a tree. "Sit, then, speak." Emma took a breath. "I know I've done damage. I came here to buy what shouldn't be sold. But I understand now, this land isn't just property. It's memory. It's life." Lonnie didn't interrupt. Her silence was heavier than words. "I've left my job," Emma continued, "and I've transferred my savings to cover the tax lien on your property. The debt's cleared." The old woman blinked. "You? What?" "The land won't be auctioned anymore," Emma said. "It's yours, safe." Lonnie stared at her, as though trying to read the truth in her eyes. "Why would you do this?" "Because it's the right thing," Emma whispered. "Because I finally understand what you were trying to protect." For a long moment, Lonnie said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Maybe the island truly did send you here." She turned toward the house, her voice carrying softly. "Kai is at the halau. Go. He needs to hear this from you." Emma found Kai near the dance school, helping repair a thatched roof still damp from the rain. He looked up when he saw her, surprise flashing across his face before something colder took its place. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Finishing what I started," she said quietly. He wiped his hands on a rag, watching her warily. "I told you, there's nothing left to fix." "There is," she said. "You just haven't heard it yet." She stepped closer, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I paid the lien, Kai. Your family's land is safe. The auction's cancelled." He froze, the words hanging between them like thunder. "What?" "It's done. You won't lose your home." Kai stared at her, disbelief flickering into confusion. "Why would you do that?" "Because I couldn't keep taking when this place has given me everything." The silence that followed was heavy and fragile. He took a slow step toward her. "You gave up your job for this." "I gave up my blindness," she said. Something softened in his face then, the guarded tension melting away. He looked at her as though truly seeing her for the first time. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. "That's why it matters." For a long time, neither of them moved. Then Kai exhaled, his voice barely above a whisper. "You changed everything." Emma smiled faintly. "No, the island did. You just helped me listen." That evening, the sun dipped low, setting the horizon ablaze in orange and pink. The village gathered for a celebration, laughter, song, and the beat of drums echoing through the valley. Lonnie approached Emma, placing a lei gently around her neck. "You've done something few people from your world ever do," she said. "You gave back what you could not own. That is Aloha." Emma's eyes glistened. "Thank you." "No," Lonnie said. "Thank you." Kai appeared beside them, dressed in white, barefoot, the wind tugging at his hair. "The halau is performing one final dance tonight," he said. "Stay." Emma nodded. As the music began, the dancers moved in perfect rhythm, their hands tracing stories against the firelight. Emma felt the drum beats deep in her chest, steady, eternal, familiar. When the last note faded, Kai stepped forward, taking her hand. "Dance with me," he said softly. "I'm not dressed for, then dance with your heart." He led her to the center, their movements slow and unchoreographed, more a prayer than a dance. The crowd watched quietly, as if understanding that this was something sacred. When the song ended, the world seemed to exhale. The island was still. Later, under the moonlight, Emma stood with Kai at the edge of the shore. The waves lapped at their feet, cool and alive. "So what happens now?" she asked. Kai looked at her, his expression soft. Now, you let life happen. Without plans. Without permission. She smiled. That sounds terrifying. It's supposed to be. He reached for her hand. But maybe, for once, you don't have to face it alone. She looked at him, then at the ocean, vast, endless, forgiving. And for the first time in her life, she didn't think about what she was losing, only what she had finally found. 6 months later, the city lights of Los Angeles glittered beneath Emma's plane as it descended for the last time. She looked out through the small window, the skyline glowing like an old photograph, beautiful, familiar, and impossibly distant. Once, this view had made her pulse race with ambition. Now, it only filled her with quiet gratitude. She wasn't returning to stay. She was only here to close the last door she had left open. Her old apartment still smelled faintly of coffee and rain. The minimalist furniture, the neatly arranged awards, the rows of suits in the closet, it all felt like a life she had outgrown. She ran her fingers over the desk where she'd spent endless nights chasing deadlines. Her reflection shimmering faintly in the dark glass. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything you taught me." She left the keys on the counter and walked away. Back on the island a week later, the air greeted her like an embrace. Soft, warm, full of the scent of salt and plumeria. As she stepped out of the small airport, she could hear music drifting from somewhere nearby. The faint echo of drums and laughter. Home Noelani was the first to spot her. "You came back for good," she said, pulling her into a hug. "I think I was always meant to," Emma replied. They sat at a beachside cafe where the ocean shimmered like melted glass. Noelani sipped her iced tea and smiled. "I always told you, the island would heal you. You just needed to stop fighting it." Emma laughed. "You were right about everything. I usually am." They watched as a group of children chased each other along the surf, their joy unfiltered and free. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt the quiet rhythm of belonging, not to a company, not to a role, but to life itself. "Are you happy?" Noelani asked. Emma thought for a moment. "I'm learning to be. And that feels enough." Later that afternoon, Emma followed the familiar dirt path to the halau. The air was thick with sunlight and the sound of singing voices rising in unison, powerful yet gentle. When she reached the clearing, she stopped. The dancers were in motion, their feet moving with perfect grace, their hands painting invisible stories in the air. At the center, directing them, was Lonnie. Her silver hair gleamed in the light, and when she saw Emma, her face softened into a smile. "You returned," Lonnie said. Emma bowed her head slightly. "If you'll still have me, you were never gone," the older woman said. "The land remembers those who listen." She gestured toward the group. "We have a new class today. Will you join them?" Emma hesitated only a moment before stepping barefoot onto the wooden floor. The music began, gentle drums, the hum of a chant. She moved slowly at first, then more fluidly, the rhythm familiar now, like the beating of her own heart. When the song ended, Lonnie nodded in quiet approval. "You dance with understanding now," Emma smiled. "Because I finally know what it means. And what does it mean?" "It means to give back," Emma said softly. "To move with gratitude, not gain." Lonnie's eyes shone. "Then you've learned what most never do." As the day faded, Emma walked down to the shore. The sun was low, the water golden. She saw him before he saw her, standing knee-deep in the tide, helping two young boys push out a fishing canoe. Kai. He looked over his shoulder, and when his eyes met hers, a slow smile spread across his face, the same quiet, steady warmth she had fallen into months ago. "You're late," he said. "For what?" "For forever." She laughed, shaking her head as she stepped closer, the water swirling around her ankles. "You still talk like every sentence belongs in a song." "Maybe it does," he said. "This island tends to make poets of people." For a long moment, they just stood there, the sea curling around them, the sky painted in hues of fire and rose. "I kept wondering if you'd come back," he said. I didn't leave, she whispered. Not really. He reached out, brushing her hair from her face, his hand lingering just long enough to remind her of everything they'd survived. You ready to stay? He asked. Emma smiled, her voice quiet but certain. I already am. That night, the village gathered once more by the shore, torches flickering, music rising. Emma stood beside Kai, their hands intertwined as dancers moved gracefully before the flames. The song told the story of the ocean and the land of loss and return, of love rediscovered. And as Emma watched, she realized she was no longer just observing the story. She was part of it. The final verse rose into the air like a prayer. The crowd joined in, their voices weaving through the night. Kai turned to her, his gaze reflecting the torchlight. Every dance has a hidden meaning, he said softly. Emma nodded. And every ending is just another beginning. He smiled. Then let's keep dancing. And as they stepped barefoot into the sand beneath the island sun, surrounded by music, laughter, and the rhythm of the sea, Emma finally understood. Peace wasn't a destination. It was a way of moving through the world. Sometimes life doesn't break us. It simply pauses, waiting for us to listen. Emma's story isn't only about love. It's about awakening, about remembering the quiet truth that peace was never out there in the world she chased, but always inside the heart she ignored. For years, she believed happiness was something to earn, a prize that came only after the struggle. But the island taught her that joy doesn't arrive when we win. It appears when we stop running. Maybe that's what life is asking from all of us, to stop chasing perfection long enough to notice the beauty already blooming in the silence we keep avoiding, to let go of control, of fear, of the endless need to prove, and to simply breathe. Emma walked away from the noise of ambition, not because she was lost, but because she was finally found. And in that surrender, she discovered something the world can't buy: peace. The kind that comes from living honestly, loving deeply, and listening fully. Perhaps you've been there too, caught between who you think you must be and who your soul is quietly asking you to become. If so, remember this: it's never too late to stop, to listen, to begin again. And maybe, just maybe, your heart has its own island waiting, a place where you can start hearing your own rhythm again. If this story touched you, if you felt something awaken inside you, stay with us. Like this video so that more hearts can find it. Subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bell, and be part of this family of souls who believe in the power of stories to heal, to move, and to transform. Leave a comment below and tell us what this story made you feel. We read every word with gratitude, and if it moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that peace still exists, that love still saves, that renewal is always possible. Don't go just yet. There are more tales waiting here for you. Stories that remind us that love can return, hope can rebuild, and endings can become beginnings when the heart chooses to stay open. Watch another story now, and let it guide you where words alone cannot go. Because in the end, the world won't remember how high we climbed. It will remember how deeply we lived. And like Emma, beneath the island sun, may we all find our way back home, to love, to peace, to ourselves. This is Lasting Tales, where every story stays with your heart long after the final word.